everybody, and welcome back to the Silicon Nubian YouTube channel, where we cover all things tech. If you have followed this channel for any length of time or you're just checking it out now, you'll notice that we have done and posted a lot of Linux distribution reviews. And I thought it'd be interesting to show how this is done, how we can install and kick the tires of different Linux distributions and releases and get them done. Now, a little disclaimer, the scope of this video is just to show you the software that we use to run the virtual machines, and that's how we do it. We do it with using virtual machines, using the preferred software is Oracle VirtualBox. We're not going to go into what I use to make the videos. I might do that at a later date if there are requests to do so. Also, we're not going to go into more deeper discussion with respect to, for example, Intel VTX, virtual machine hardware support and whatnot. We're just going to look at Oracle's VirtualBox, and this is how primarily we install and check out different Linux distributions. A little bit on the hardware that we use for this machine that we're on, where we also not only run the virtual machines but also edit the videos for upload. This is an Intel Core i7 4790K based system, 16 gigs of DDR3 2400 megahertz memory. Also running on an MSI Z97 Gaming 7 motherboard with an AMD based video card from PowerColor, the R9280X series video card with 3 gigabytes of DDR video memory, excuse me. Also, we have a 500 gigabyte capacity Samsung Evo 850 SSD drive and a 1 terabyte Western Digital Caviar Blue hard drive. That's the main important equipment. Also, of course, a Lideon DVD burner. So that's the system that this is running on, which I find runs virtual machines quite smoothly. You won't really get the same experience running on a virtual machine as you will on real hardware, that's definite. But if I can get 75 to 80% of the way there, and just the whole idea is to show the person, the viewer, what the distribution or the software looks like, how it operates, and to that ends, using the virtual machine software for Linux distribution videos has done quite well. So how do we get VirtualBox? Well, a little bit of history. VirtualBox is called Oracle VirtualBox. It wasn't always owned by Oracle. I believe, and someone may correct me, it was first developed by Sun Microsystems. Oracle bought over all of that, and they now renamed it Oracle VirtualBox. The latest version is 5.1. The website is www.virtualbox.org. To download, click on the big 5.1 release picture, and we get to the latest release, which is VirtualBox 5.1.18. We have different platforms. It's a multi-platform application, which is great. Windows hosts are supported, OS X hosts for the Mac users, Linux distribution, and Solaris Unix hosts are supported as well. We also have something known as the extension pack. After you've installed the main application, there's an extension pack which adds support for things, additional support for USB 2.0, 3.0 devices, VirtualBox RDP, disk encryption, NVMe and PXE boot for Intel cards, and a host of other different enhancements to the original software that come as an extension pack. So we download and install VirtualBox, and we would then start it. Okay, so this is the main screen of VirtualBox. What we have here, it would all be blank except for the fact that I do have a virtual machine that has been installed and set up prior. It's running Manjaro Linux. It's now powered off, as we can see. It shows you the creation date, when it was powered, I should say. Powered off since the February 9th of this year. And it shows you all the settings on this side of what's in the virtual machine and whatnot. Of course, this is incorrect, but it's what the settings were used. A little side note, and there's a preview window. You can create snapshots, which are basically will create duplicates of the virtual machine that you have. This is great for software testing, for example, testing out different configurations and whatnot, where you might hose a system or cause some instability. You would create a snapshot and run your tests within the snapshot, leaving the original untouched and unfazed, and you can easily delete the virtual machine. Deleting a virtual machine is quite simple. A little side note, a virtual machine is just that, it's virtual. The operating system that you will install or run on the virtual machine, quote unquote, thinks that it's running on real hardware. All the hardware has been virtualized. It's been giving access to your CPU, your video, but it thinks it's contacting it directly, but the virtual machine software, the hypervisor inside, basically filters all those requests and virtualizes all the hardware. It's a very complex yet very elegant piece of software engineering, and I love it. So, but it creates a lot of files. So what you do is, if you have used the virtual machine, for example, we've used it for a video, and you want to get rid of it and free up some disk space, you would right click once, you would go to remove, and it will ask you, you're about to remove the following virtual machines on the machine list Manjaro. Would you like to delete the files containing the virtual machine from your hard disk as well? Doing this will also remove the files containing the machine's virtual hard disks if they were not in use by another machine, and you would say delete all files, and it's gone. So this is what the VirtualBox window will look like when there are no virtual machines or disks that have been created. Okay, and it gives you a little blurb here, welcome to VirtualBox. So let's create a new machine. But before that, what about the extensions? Remember the extensions. When you install the Oracle VM VirtualBox Manager, which is this window, by default, you don't get the extensions. Generally, once a day, I think that's the default setting, VirtualBox will check with its own website. It'll do an automatic check and tell you if you're running the latest version, and the version of the extensions have to be the exact same. If you update VirtualBox to a new version, you'll be prompted to update to the latest extensions, or the extensions won't work correctly. So let's force it to do that. Usually we do it automatically. Check for updates. You're running the most recent version, and it will tell you again right away, you have an old version 5020 of the Oracle extension pack. Do you wish to download the latest one from the internet? You would say download, and again, this would happen automatically, but it checks once a day, and because I've already started the software once in the day, it hasn't prompted me, so I did that manually. Click on install, upgrade. You have to scroll down all the way to get to light up the I agree button. And the extension pack is now installed. No need to reboot or restart the software. And ask if you want to delete the file that you downloaded. You click on delete, you're good. The extension pack is now installed. So let's look at some of the settings. We go to preferences. We have general, where your machine files, your virtual machine files are located. If you run a lot of virtual machines, please be aware that disk space can be used up very quickly. So you really want to give the directory, the folder where you put your virtual machines in, make sure that that drive has a decent amount of space on it. And I leave this at its default, the VRDP authentication library. Again, the scope of this video is not to get into the minutiae of VirtualBox, but just to show you how to set something up real quick and easy. As a courtesy, I'm going through the settings here. Input, You have a lot of keyboard shortcuts. You can also auto capture your keyboard, but I generally, for setting up a basic virtual machine, you do not have to even go into settings. I think most of the presets here are fine. Update, of course, once a day. Stable release version. All new releases are all new releases and pre-releases. Being that I want this to be stable as possible, I stick on stable version, and you have a choice: 1 day, 2 days, 1 month. I leave it every day. Language, English. Display, maximum screen size. I would rather let the software adjust this, or the virtual machine itself, while running. So I would not touch that. That's my opinion. Your networking and your active networks. Extensions, you will see that the Oracle VirtualBox Extension Pack version 5.1.1.8, the same version number and release as the software in general that I'm running, and we have proxy for proxy settings. Okay. We also have import appliances. There are pre-made virtual machines running appliances. An appliance, I guess in layman's term, you can think of an appliance as a software package which includes base operating system files and the software necessary to perform a specific task. For example, there are appliances that are made for mail servers, mail server appliances, FTP server, PBX system appliances. There's appliances, so many different ones that are available, again, outside the scope of this this video. So they're pre-made VirtualBox appliances. Export appliance, you can create a VirtualBox appliance yourself and export it. Virtual Media Manager, which brings up the virtual hard drives, virtual optical drives, and floppy disks that are available. Yes, floppy disks. Again, these are all virtualized, right? They're not real. If you can wrap your head around that. Network Operations Manager, check for updates and reset all warnings and exit. So let's create a virtual machine, shall we? You go to New. What kind of machine are we going to create? Oh boy. What are we going to call it? Test Machine 1. What's it going to be? Mac OS X, we have a list, Microsoft Windows, Linux, or other. Well, Linux. Ubuntu 64-bit, look at all the lists we have. Linux 2.2, it's not one of the major distributions. So we're just going to go to the default Ubuntu 64-bit. Okay. This does alter a few settings, but for us. But for the sake of this video and brevity, we'll put it Ubuntu 64. We'll go next. Now, this is important. How much memory are we going to allocate to this virtual machine? Now, my understanding, and I could be wrong, I could be corrected, but my understanding, this is a very important setting. It's telling me my system has 16 gigabytes of RAM available. Please be informed and understand that when you allocate memory to a virtual machine, the real machine, which is called the host, the virtual machine is running on top of your real machine. The real machine is that i7-4790K. That's called the host. When you remove, for example, 4096, when you remove 4 gigabytes of memory and allocate it to a virtual machine, that 4 gigs of memory is no longer available to the host. So if you're running a lot of other stuff outside of your virtual machine, 4 gigs of memory, if I've allocated it to the virtual machine, is no longer available for those applications outside. Now, someone can correct me. Potentially, it's not something that's static. It's something that moves up and down. But this is my understanding of allocating memory size for a virtual machine. So I'll go next. Hard disk. The recommended size of the hard disk is 8 gigabytes. So you want to create a virtual hard drive, which is actually a set of files and a folder on your disk inside of the directory that you've assigned to hold your virtual machines. If that makes sense. It does to me. It says do not add a virtual hard disk. That's interesting if you want to run stuff in memory. Create a virtual hard disk now. Use an existing virtual hard disk. We don't have any. So we say create And now it's going to ask us what type of hard disk file. VDI, VirtualBox image file, virtual hard disk, or virtual machine disk. I leave it as the default, the VirtualBox disk image. This is just different formats of hard disk image files. Dynamically allocated. This is very important. What this means, and I usually leave it on the default, if you say that you're allocating 8 gigs of hard drive space for your virtual machine, if you put it on fixed size, it will take 8 gigabytes from whatever disk or folder you have your virtual machine in, that's going to be installed in or running from immediately. But just because you've allocated 8 gigabytes, 10 gigabytes, 15 gigabytes to a virtual machine doesn't mean the machine needs all that space. For example, I have a hard drive with 500 gigs, right? But just installing Windows uses up a very small portion of that. I don't need to allocate the whole drive just to running, for example, Microsoft Office or another application. Hard drive space is allocated or memory is allocated and given back dynamically. With VirtualBox, we can do the same thing with the virtual hard drive. I prefer to leave it dynamically allocated, which in layman's term really means that it will only take as much real hard drive space up to the maximum that you will specify, by the way, on a dynamic basis as needed. Okay, next. Now we're going to actually make the actual size of the hard disk. This is now that I've set it to dynamically allocated, what it means it will take up to 8 gigs. So the system will see when I install a virtual machine, the Linux distribution that we are going to run will see that there's an 8 gigabyte drive available. I'm going to increase this a bit. I can also type it in. 20 gigabytes. Okay? Again, I'm not worried about this. That's it. Because it will allocate it dynamically, so it's not going to take 20 gigs from my hard drive right away. So here we have the general settings. Test machine 1, Ubuntu 64-bit as the operating system, or its derivatives. It doesn't have to be Ubuntu. Why I chose Ubuntu is because if I want to do Mint, Ubuntu, Kubuntu, Xubuntu, this setting will work for all of them. And other Linux distributions as well. Base memory, 4 gigs of RAM. Boot order, floppy optical hard disk. I'm going to show you how to change that. Acceleration, VTX, which is for my Intel system. AMD V, that's hardware assisted acceleration for virtual machines. Generally, that's located in your BIOS. You can turn that on or off. Again, outside the scope of this particular video. Nested paging and KVM paravirtualization. This type of virtualization is going to use, which is again outside the scope, just to say that the defaults are great. So video memory 16 megabytes is the default. We're going to change that. Remote desktop, you can actually connect to your virtual machine remotely. I'm going to leave that disabled, again outside the scope of this video. Video capture, we can actually record the virtual machine from within the VirtualBox manager. Disabled, we'll leave that. Controller is IDE, again virtualized, right? Controller SATA also is there. So here it is. The IDE secondary master is your optical drive, and the SATA port is. All of this sounds kind of throwback, but you don't have to worry about that. The virtual machine manager will take care of everything. Host drivers, Windows Direct Sound, controller, ICH AC97, that's virtualized. Again, adapter, Intel Pro 1000 MT, virtualized adapter. That's not the actual adapter in my real hardware. That's when they're going to be virtualized and linked to the adapter, the actual hardware adapter on my motherboard. USB controller, shared folders. You can actually share folders between the guest, which this is called. This test machine will be called the guest, and the host, which is my real hardware that it's running on top of, okay? And description, there's none. So I can start it right now, but I won't. I right click and I go to settings. I want to fine tune certain things, okay? And I'm going to do that right now. So, advanced, I don't want a shared clipboard, which is actually good. If you're running a virtual machine for reasons and you need to share data, drag and drop, it also can be enabled. Okay, between the virtual machine and the host, the guest and the host. Description, encryption, I can encrypt the whole virtual machine. System, base memory is there. Boot order, I don't want floppy, take the floppy out of there. I can actually move it down in the boot order. I can just take it out. I've taken it out. I can do network boot. So I have my optical drive booting first, my hard disk booting second. The chipset, I can choose ICH9 or PTX3. This is, I'll leave this at the default, this being more modern, ICH9 than this one, but they both work. Pointing device, USB tablet, PS2 mouse, or multi-touch tablet. I just leave it as the default USB tablet or PS2 mouse. It's up to you. Okay. Extended features, enable IO API-C. Again, beyond the scope of this, but I'll just leave that on there. I won't touch it. Enable EFI, special OSs only. Extended firmware, and I'm not going to deal with that. That's going to stay as it is. Hardware clock and UTC time. I'll just leave that. Again, if you just want to quickly get a machine up and running, these settings will not interfere with that. Okay. Processor. How many CPUs? It knows I have a quad-core processor with 4 cores or hyper-threading, but it only shows the real cores. So I'm going to say yes. I want to use as much as I can of that. I'll use all 4 cores. Okay. Execution cap is 100%, which means the virtual machine is able to use up, if necessary, as much CPU as it needs. Enable PAE NX. If you have allocated a lot of RAM, I'd say over 4 gigs or so to your virtual machine, you might want to enable this. Okay, I'll enable it anyways. Again, that's outside the scope of physical address. That's a little bit outside the scope of this video, so we won't get into that right now, but just to say you can put it on, I will. Now we get to display. We've covered system acceleration. Of course, enable the extensions, the hardware extensions for virtual machines, or virtualization, I should say. Nested paging, so that's, and we leave the power virtualization interface as default. Okay. Display, video memory. Remember 16 gigs? I like to crank that up to the max. 128 is only the max, but it's okay. Trust me, it'll work. Monitor count, leave it at 1. Scale factor, I don't touch that. Enable 2D and 3D acceleration. The interesting thing is, for Linux hosts, invalid settings detected. 2D acceleration, as of now, will pop up an error. Yet, 3D acceleration will be fine. Now, for the sake of recording videos, I've always been able to get away with not enabling any of these. The system is fast enough that I can deal with it. With respect to if you want to do things and you want to show virtual machine of a Windows host, 2D video card acceleration does work as well as 3D, and may give you an improvement in performance, and we'll get into that in a minute. Storage. This is the interesting part. Now, follow me on this. I want to boot in an ISO. Just like you want to load up your Linux, you have to get an ISO either on a flash drive or a blank DVD to boot the system prior to installation. Now, it's showing me, once again, that my optical disk is empty. It's showing me that my hard drive, again, is what I told you. Remember, it's allocated dynamically. It's only virtual size 4 megs, actual size 2 megs. Right now, it's very small. It will grow as needed. I can also select whether it's a solid state drive or a hot pluggable drive. Okay. When checked, the guest system will see the virtual disk as a solid state device or a hot pluggable device. Again, outside the scope of this video, just to show you the many configuration options which are available. So let's load up the drive, the optical drive, with an ISO file. It can be a live CD DVD, although, to be honest with you, it's telling you that when checked, the virtual disk will not be removed when the guest system ejects it. I never like that, so I leave that unchecked. click on the icon here, choose a virtual disk drive, an optical disk drive. Here's my ISO files, and I'll say, let's say the latest Neon. Right. Okay. So that's Neon User Edition, ISO, loaded inside of the optical drive. The beautiful thing is it will read the ISO as a loaded optical drive, as a disk, and you could boot off of that. So that's all we need to do for storage. I won't go any further. Audio, again, Windows Direct Sound, ICH AC97. You can use the Sound Blaster 16 virtualization or Intel HD Auto virtualization. It's up to you. Okay. Networking. Network attached to NAT for adapter 1. Adapter 2 is disabled. 3 and 4 you can add adapters. I'll just leave it by its default. Here's advanced. Again, we can actually virtualize different adapters. I'm going to leave it on its default because that seems to be universally recognized adapter for the different Linux distributions and most OSs that I've put in here. Serial ports, don't need one. Again, miss anything? Enable network adapter, that's by default. Serial ports, don't need it by default. It's disabled. USB ports, I can add a USB controller and I can bring over USB devices. For example, webcams and other things can be brought over with and let the virtual machine will actually use it. Okay, so that's interesting. So I can add what they call USB filters here, and it's very interesting. I'm going to just add one, and not to use it, but just to show you. Again, it's not completely necessary. Your keyboard or mouse will always work, well, most of the time, but this just to add in case I want to add, for example, my webcam. Shared folders are none, user interface is none. So I click OK. Now what I've done is I've set up the virtual machine with the added things. You can see all the settings here, and now we start it. Highlight it. You can either double click on it or you can start. It starts with a little DOS box, or the virtual DOS box. Okay. And down here we have indications of hard drive activity, network activity, USB activity, and optical drive activity, and all these other things as well. Video capture disabled, VTX extensions, and other. If I click within the window, it'll capture my mouse and the keyboard. And here we go. If I want to view it a little bigger, I can go to full screen mode. When it says host key F, I'll show you what that means in a second. Now we're in full screen mode. I always have this little, down here, I have a little menu for the virtual machine that I can use. To get out of full screen mode, it's very simple. I can just go here and go to view and get out of full screen mode. Okay? Or use the host key, which I believe is the right control key. And here we have, I'm running KDE Neon in a virtual machine. How's that? So that's really simple. The beauty of this now is I can do certain things. For example, those extensions. If I want to do, I want to add more capabilities to my virtual machine, such as increased support for different resolutions, definitely in a performance speed up, I can do this. I can install the guest editions CD image. I would go down to devices. It lists all the devices I can add. You'll see my no webcams connected, USB, unknown devices, my keyboard. There's my webcam. Okay, it's been brought over. It's not in webcams, which is weird. Shared folders, there's none. My network is showing it's connected. Optical drives. What I can do, remove from virtual drive. I can actually eject the disk virtually. I can install guest editions. What guest editions are, and I would tell you to probably do it on a virtual machine that you've installed to the virtual hard drive, as opposed to trying it in a live CD or environment like we're doing now. That will install a number of enhancements that will make the virtual machine performance definitely better. Okay, unable to insert. I know why, because I have to eject the disk that's already in there, which is this original disk. So that's why I said it's best to do to perform that. Again, insert editions, the guest edition CD, on a system that's been installed to a virtual drive. I would start the installation, and I just want to show you very quickly. And this is KDE Neon. Okay. What I would do is, after installation of this, I would then go while running the virtual machine and install the guest edition CD image. Now, the CD image is not in a format, if you run Linux, that is readily available to all Linux distributions per se. There might be a little bit of reading. If you have questions, maybe I can help you with it. But other than that, that's pretty much VirtualBox. At least the scope of the information that I wanted to present in this video. If you want additional information, or I might even do a video about installing the guest edition CD image, or a few other tricks and tips for VirtualBox, I'd be happy to make a video. Just leave a comment in the comment field. Give me a thumbs up if you like the video. I know I've thrown a lot of information out there, and it might be information overload right now. But in closing, what I can tell you is, after you've installed VirtualBox, and preferably the extension pack, and you want to set up a virtual machine, you really don't have to do much with settings. You don't have to do anything unless you want to change the folder that your virtual machines are going to be in. Okay, that is understood. I've done that. It's better. Great. I took them off the SSD and put them on a larger hard drive, so I know I won't run out of space. That being said, 90% of the defaults are great. When you do create a virtual machine, though, you do want to go in and change some of the settings like I've showed you. Increase the video RAM. If you want to install, you obviously have to go in there and tell it what ISO you want to run in the virtual optical drive and whatnot. So that's the video for now. Really a quick overview. Not that quick. It's quite a long video. I'm sorry. But I just wanted to get you started. And if there's any questions or comments, please leave them in the comment field, and I will be happy to get back to you. Also, we have other videos upcoming on hardware. We have an AMD Ryzen build. I'm shutting down the KDE Neon right now. That's coming up. We have not sure as well. It's going to be my own personal machine. And we're back to the VirtualBox Virtual Manager. So we have a KDE Ryzen build coming up. Micro ATX. I've seen a lot of people use the ATX boards. Boards are very hard to come by right now. So that's one of the main reasons I haven't done it yet. I'm very particular on the hardware. It's going to replace the system I have. If you look down in the videos that I've passed, you'll notice that I did have a video where I put a APU, a 7850K AMD APU and motherboard system together in a fractal design cube case, which I love very much. I wanted to keep the cube case, and that limited me to a micro ATX motherboard, which I'm not too upset about. I love the case and I want to keep it. So I've pretty much settled on the equipment. So in another week or two, I should be ordering the equipment, and I will. It will be a water-cooled AMD Ryzen build. Once again, if you like what's happening here, give me a thumbs up, leave comments. If you'd like to see more on VirtualBox, kick the tires a little bit more and really get into the nitty-gritty, I'd be happy to do that. Anyways, take care, everybody, and see you soon.